Welcome. Hi. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I have to say, going into this panel, I was worried. I was skeptical. Yeah, I'm actually gonna put my hair up. Because it's a frizzy mess, Sylvie. Say hello to the people. And as it turns out, I was very surprised. We have this conversation about opinions sometimes. We talk about opinions that people hold, when actually, sometimes there's just being a jerk and not being a jerk. The people on the panel were not jerks. And I didn't necessarily expect them to be jerks, but I did expect to disagree with them on a lot more than I did. And that leads us to one of the hottest topics of the conversation, which was self-advocacy versus people advocating on behalf of people. I don't believe that anyone should ever have to advocate for themselves. I think it is a unsafe, harmful, exhausting, absolutely unnecessary experience for people to have to go through. However, although that's sort of this utopian state of educational institutions, we have a lot of work before we get to that spot, right? We're not in this place. So the conversation then becomes, what can we do in between the time where we haven't reached an effective, perfect system, and there are people experiencing discomfort, barriers, and more when they navigate through the education system. How do we, in the meantime, make life easier for those people? There is a lack of awareness about a lot of the resources that are being offered, which leads to underutilization of resources that are available. Can y'all see my kitchen? I hope not. Listen, I'll deal with the quarantine dishes when I deal with the quarantine dishes. So if there's an office that's advocating, some sort of resource and disability center within an educational institution, people have to know that it exists before they can act upon it. Another thing is making sure that the people that are making those spaces tick don't have conscious or unconscious biases. Finally, people that are in power are starting to see that there is extra work that goes along with having a disability in the first place. It was refreshing to hear panelists say things like, it's a shame to have to explain yourself to a professor. They said that having to advocate for yourself was a shame, they said that it was painful, and they said that it was exhausting. So, that sounds a lot like what I just said a few seconds ago. See, folks with disabilities shouldn't have to beg for people to give them accommodations. It's a right that they have. Are you good, or are you just gonna blast through doors and interrupt this video? I gave you 20 seconds in front of the camera and now you think you're like this big. Okay. In fact, if we have to beg people to do their jobs, then maybe they shouldn't have those jobs in the first place. The pay grade up there is okay, so it should be expected that people who have jobs within academic institutions have the capacity, have the competency to do the job without being asked. And that's not a negative thing. That's a positive thing. To be able to have confidence in your coworkers, in your peers, in your mentors, is a beautiful thing that inspires confidence when people are navigating through difficult systems. I was really excited by a lot of the things that the president of NASCAD was saying. Things like, something is structurally wrong if going to university makes someone sick. There's lots of fear in the air. There's fear about what accessibility plans are in place, but then there's also fear about whether or not the faculty is even going to adhere to those plans in the first place. A student should never have to disclose a diagnosis to a professor. And in my opinion, a student shouldn't have to feel like they're incapable of being successful in an academic institution. At the end of the day, the goal is that whoever wants to learn can. And it was recognized that things were going to get a little wild once online classes started. But something that I found, again, really refreshing was that they acknowledged that when they roll all of this out, it's going to be a work of progress. When they start doing courses again, it's probably going to be flawed, and they have systems in place where they will be working with disabled folks in order to address the barriers that have come up for them because of this huge shift in the way that we're being educated. It's also worth mentioning that the way that we're having these discussions online right now is even a barrier. And everyone with this team that I'm so lucky to be a part of has been doing an amazing job. The folks at Reachability, and there's no sort of bias here, but it's pretty inspiring to watch them work as hard as they have been. And it's also really inspiring to watch them shift what was once a physical conference into a completely digital conference, because everyone had to have known, one, how much work that was going to be, two, how it was going to become a difficult thing for a lot of people to access, and how much work it was going to take to try to reduce those barriers. People taking those risks is exactly what we need. People deciding, hey, it's not going to be perfect, and the fact that it's not going to be perfect is going to put our heads on the chopping block. But this conference still needs to happen, and so let's make it happen. New technology and, being inexperienced in any sort of field leads to misinterpretations. For example, I asked how institutions are working to have disabled folks understand that they are capable of success. And the question that was asked, from a paraphrase of my question, was, do you think it's possible that disabled people can't even be successful in post-secondary institutions? Not quite what I was trying to ask, but this stuff happens, and it's not this thing that we need to get mad about. It's not like, oh, someone dropped the ball. It doesn't lay on a specific person. What it is a new thing, a margin of error that is expected and will happen to all of us as we begin to navigate this new territory that we're in. So in this time, I think that everybody should be exercising as much patience as they can muster, as empathetic as they possibly can be towards people who are putting themselves in a position of pretty intense pressure and scrutiny from the public. With one problem, sometimes another pops up, and we can be conscious of it, but we can't stall and make it so that no progress gets done because of fear of what might happen. For example, someone was saying that cutting all of the curbs would be fine, except for the fact that if you have impaired vision, you're then unable to feel the curb with your cane. In the end, I was left with a lot of hope after this conversation. I go to a lot of conferences and have a lot of discussions with people where they're saying, this is all about hope, this is all about hope, and it leaves me feeling disappointed, upset, and sometimes, in extreme cases, lied to. Something that this whole week has been really good at doing is actually providing me with real hope. Being able to see the people that are in charge in these institutions actually having a good, workable knowledge base and having their hearts in the right place as well is a wonderful thing for me to have experienced. And now I think going into conferences like this, I may have less barriers up, less walls about how I think people in these positions are going to behave by default. Two things that I'll close off with that made me feel happy were that, one, the people who end up gravitating towards positions of disability support and advocacy normally are very passionate. Their hearts are normally right there in the office with them. It's not exactly something that people follow for financial reasons or because it's been a family tradition. Normally it's because there's passion there, and they are there primarily to take care of you and to help you navigate the world. Lastly, if there's anyone out there who has gone through this and who feels like a burden, or who is navigating through systems, jumping through hoops, and every time they hit a barrier, they feel like they are somehow inherently incorrect, just remember, we didn't create the barriers that we're running up against. The institutions that we're trying to navigate, the systems that we're trying to pass through, they created those barriers. And all of the people who are affected by it are not to blame. Sometimes the first thought we have when I say, you're not to blame, is, well, then who is? And sure, I think that is oftentimes a very important question to ask. But maybe first, in this troubling time, we can just focus on the fact that it isn't a disabled person's responsibility to advocate for themselves all the time. And at the same time, it's not their fault that they're facing barriers. I again really want to thank Reachability for having me be a part of this. I feel a little lighter with every conference that I attend than I thought I would. Until next time, I will see you.